Hello, how is everyone doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, our weekly live streams. Here we are again, Tuesday afternoon, UK time. Might be morning if you're over in America. Might be a bit later if you're a bit further east of us. Wherever you are, though, welcome. This is always good fun to hang out with you guys. As always, I'm here. There'll usually be someone else or a few of the other guys from the Audio Imperia team here as well. We encourage chat, say hi, say whatever you like, within reason, of course. But yeah, any questions, you want to get involved, you want to say something, feel free. That's what the chat's there for. And obviously you can talk to me or some of the other guys here as well. Yeah, we're just going to hang out and do some, well, not really composing this time, because somebody pretty talented has already done the composing for us, a Mr. John Powell. Hello, Max. How you doing? Good to see you. Yeah, so we're going to be taking a look today at a short section from How to Train Your Dragon. Pretty good soundtrack. In fact, one of my favorite soundtracks probably over the last 15 years now, I guess. And it's obviously recently been re-released as a live action film with slightly modified version of the soundtrack, but all those great themes and melodies that we love. So we're going to be taking a little look at probably the classic track in this soundtrack, Test Drive. I think it's now called something slightly different on the new soundtrack. We're going to take a little look, we're going to mock it up, and we're going to focus today a little bit on orchestration. We've sort of talked about orchestration in our streams, but today we're going to talk in a bit more detail about orchestration and why composers may make certain choices and how they may impact the sort of tone and the style and the feel. Hey, Peter. Hey, Shane. Thank you all for joining us. Wow, we've got some people from Trinidad. We've got from Spain. Wow, we got a bit of an international representation here. Wherever you're from, welcome. You're always welcome here. So as I was saying, yes, we're going to be doing a mock-up of this, but we're going to be focusing more on the orchestration choices and sort of how these things are orchestrated rather than purely the mock-up. Hopefully the mock-up will sound okay as well. That's the plan. But it's going to be more about looking at how these kinds of huge, big, epic moments in film soundtracks and cinematic scoring may be put together. And as I say, I feel confident talking about it today because it's not my music. It's John Powell. He's a fantastic composer. He's proven that time and time again. And this is probably one of his, best, certainly most famous and most well-loved scores. And for good reason. It's just, it's a great film and it's a great soundtrack and it's a marriage made in heaven. Sometimes you just get a composer and a film, they come together and it's, you just can't imagine anybody else ever having done it. And this is one of those. So yeah, we're going to be taking a little look at that. I've sort of done the sketch. We'll look through the sketch, which is all piano, which sounds a bit weird on its own. Then we're going to sort of mock it up bit by bit. And as we do it, we're going to build it, bring it to life, see some of the choices that have been made. Incidentally, I'm very fortunate to have the score. The score for this, full score for this is available to buy. It's a great score. If you like looking at scores, analyzing scores, it's a fantastic score. So this is taken pretty much from the score. So again, I feel confident because I sort of know that this is what's in the score. I've not embellished, but I've sort of done a few things here and there that we may need to do for the mock-up to make it work as a virtual instrument piece. But pretty much note for note, this is from the score. So I feel confident talking about it and how it's put together. Hello from Mexico. Wow, we really do have great range of people. Hello, Symphonic. Hello, everybody. Yes, thank you for joining us. This is going to be great fun. We're going to move over to the door in a second and we're going to have a listen to what we have. And like I said, I'm not going to do the whole of Test Drive. That would take too long and, that's not going to happen. But it's about 16 bars or something like that. And it's there's a big key change at the end. If you know the film, there's a big key change at the end when, learns how to, I don't want to ruin it for you, but there's a great moment, right? And, he sort of takes control of the situation, big key change, great big, sequence. It's good fun. Watch it. If you haven't watched it, watch it. I'm sure most of you have. We're concentrating on that moment, just that last few bars at the end, because they're some of the best. So we will head over. And as I said, if you guys have any questions, anything you want to say, whether it's just hello, whether it's questions as we go, whether it's talking about anything you want, let us, put it in the chat. And I will try and keep an eye on the chat as much as I can. I usually can keep an eye on it. Sometimes I get a bit engrossed with what I'm doing, but I'll always be keeping a little eye on it and saying hello and answering questions when I can. So yeah, hopefully this is going to be an interesting one today. We're going to see how great composer like John Powell, who is one of the best orchestral composers around at the moment, brings his music to life and, uses the orchestral forces at his disposal. And if you haven't checked out the new version of the soundtrack, it's worth checking out. in some ways the same, in some ways different, like a live action thing, right? It's like it's in some ways the same, but there are differences, there are changes. There are clearly some moments where it's had to change for pacing or for new things that have been added. But it's still got all those great themes, and it's maybe slightly larger, if that's possible, than the original soundtrack. Okay, so let us move over to the door. And then we'll just start breaking this down, I think. And it's going to be a pretty leisurely one. 5 minutes in, yes, don't know the music, but the Marvel theme was good fun. Hello, Right Studio. Yes, the Marvel theme was great fun to do. I think this is going to be really good fun today as well. Max, your course to audio and peer is fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you, Max. We're really glad you enjoy it. Yeah, we have a few courses. We obviously have our Modern Composer Blueprint, our Maestro course. We also have a little free course on our YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, you should do, called Journey to Becoming a Composer. A little piece we put together if you've never composed before or you're not that experienced with the virtual instruments and you just want a little primer as to how all this stuff works. That course is a pretty good course to check out, called Journey to Becoming a Composer. It's 6 parts. We went through kind of all the basics of how you might begin using these kinds of tools for making music. I'm going to move over to the door and we shall continue. So there we go. Here's my door setup today. These are the sketches. You can see I've done a lot of sketches because I wanted to split all this out so that we can move quickly between the parts. It's all piano at the moment, but you can see I've got our Audio Imperia template here as well, including some Poseidon stuff, which I think we might use today. We're going to probably blend some Araya, some Dolce, and probably some Poseidon and Jaeger and Talos as well. So it's going to be a real blend of different things. But I think that's going to be the best way to bring it all to life. We're not going to need any vocals. There's not going to be any vocals today. May end up using some epic percussion because there is some percussion in the piece that we may want to sort of replicate. Probably no hits, certainly no distorted trailer hits. We'll disable them. And there might be some other bits as well. Probably no synths, although actually there probably will be a little bit of cinematic synth, maybe just to sort of reinforce some stuff. But we'll leave that all there for now. Yeah, so let's have a look at what we have. You're probably going to recognize this, although it's going to sound a bit weird at the moment. But as we work through this, we will hopefully make it sound less weird and more like the piece that we all know and love. So here is the sketch that I have so far, and I've split it over multiple lines to make it easier for us to take apart. There it is. Now, it sounds a little bit weird at the moment. If you hear it like this, you may be forgiven for thinking, I'm not sure that's all right. I promise you, it is actually all right. There might be 1 or 2 mistakes in there, but it's pretty much everything from the score. It's a really interesting thing that happens when you write at a piano or render things down to piano. Everything can often sound very clunky, very strange. Because the piano is very kind of transient, percussive-like instrument. All the notes are very sort of in your face. There's no texture in some ways. Obviously, there's texture if you play a piano properly, but this is all just written in basically. But there's no orchestral texture to it. So it all sounds a little bit blocky and weird and strange at the moment. As we work through, we're going to split it all apart and we're going to figure out how this is put together. And I promise it's going to be really good fun because there's actually some really beautiful writing in here, as you might expect. And we're going to sort of pick that apart. First, I'm going to say it was really interesting going through this. I mean, I know this score well because I love it, and I've been fortunate to have the score and have a look through it. It's a really interesting thing. Something that I sort of realized as I was going through it over the last day or two is that I think the reason this piece is so great, it's beautifully written, but I think it's actually what's so great about this piece of music is that it's really a pop song, right? I know that sounds weird, but it's not written like symphonic orchestral music. It's like a pop song, right? The chord sequence is this kind of, let's bring it up. So we have this C sharp minor, then this A, then we have this B, and then to E, and then back. It's all these really great pop chords, right? It's like, it sounds weird, but it's like you could make this into a ballad if you wanted to. It's got this beautiful quality to it. Or it could be a punk song. It could be like Green Day or Blink-182, right? It's like if you sped this up change the rhythm a bit, but you could pretty much take it, you know, that's like, you could make this into a vocal melody or something. But I think it's really clever on the part of John Powell that he sort of approached this with that melodic sensibility. This is not symphonic writing with complex chords and harmonies, and, you know, it's not done that way. It's done really simply, really boldly, like a pop song, with that kind of melodic sensibility, but obviously rendered orchestrally, which I think is really interesting. Hey there, Brandon. No problem at all. Thank you for joining. Really, really appreciate it. We're obviously loving everybody coming this week. And if we can teach you something, or if you can just hang out and have fun, because I know a lot of you guys are great composers. So you could probably teach me easily as much as I teach you, but it's just all about hanging out and having a good time. And yeah, if we learn some stuff along the way, that's great. I mean, I'm really, really, really pleased if that's going to be the case too. But yeah, I've been learning stuff too in our Discord. You know, people put tips up and ideas, and a few people have left comments in our YouTube videos. Really interesting stuff that I've not thought about or not tried before. So I'm learning as much doing this stuff as hopefully you guys are, which is great. Yeah, so as we were saying, it's sort of like a pop song, right? It's been written with this boldness and this kind of brightness and this really strong, almost vocal-like sensibility. I think that's a really genius move. It's a kid's film or an animated film, a family film. It's sort of traditional in some ways and non-traditional in other ways, and I think that's how the score's been approached. Traditional in the sense it's an orchestra, has that kind of classic orchestral sound, but less traditional in the sense that it's more modern and it's been approached more like a song in some ways than a pure orchestral piece. And I think that blend works really well, and that's kind of what the film feels like too. So where do we start with this? Well, I think we're probably going to start with the violins. Let me start with, I'm going to flesh out, I'm just going to solo our string section, and we'll listen to that by itself. So I'll play the whole thing, but you get the idea. We have these high strings that are playing these kind of arpeggiated broken chords, which really lend a sense of movement to the piece. They're sort of propelling the piece along with the woodwinds, as you'll see. And then the brass are really anchoring the melody and giving us that power. So maybe we'll just start by putting the strings in. That's always a good place to start. And then we'll see where we are at. This is what we would call in orchestral writing a tutti section. So T-U-T-T-I. That's when the whole orchestra is playing. You know, usually a tutti section is like, think of like the main theme for Star Wars. That's orchestral tutti writing. This is orchestral tutti writing. It's when everything's playing. It's usually the climax of a piece or a huge orchestral force piece. Other pieces might be a lot more stripped back. Maybe you're using strings or, you know, strings and a solo instrument, or having small sections playing here and there. This is pretty much everything playing from start to finish. Yeah, so let's start by putting in these strings. I'm going to just take this. I'm probably going to use a combination of Dolce and Area, like I said. So maybe I'll start with Dolce. Because I think the classic tone of Dolce is going to really help and work for us here. So we're going to use a bit of Dolce, I think, along with Area. Let me just copy this in, start at bar 0. And then as we're building this up, we can have a look at how it's all put together. So let's have a listen to what this sounds like by itself. And we're going to have to use a few different parts here. Nice, beautiful. So that's what we have going on here. I'm going to just do some sort of velocity modifications here. I'm going to do classic. You can do random. Someone told me the other day about doing random velocities using logical editor, which is actually really interesting. I'm going to try that because I've never really done that before. But I'm just going to sort of do this bit manually. So what I'm doing is I'm thinking about where these players might pick out key notes. Usually the top of a phrase or the top sort of note in a phrase, a player might play with a bit more force. It's a downbeat, or it might be a note that they need to sort of leap up a little bit to get. Either way, sometimes players may hit those top notes a bit. So I'm just doing that here, but I'm keeping it all relatively even, because if I tried to do it too much dynamic like this, it'd sound like this. That's not really what this piece is like. This is, as we said, a tutti piece. So everything's playing at a relatively even forte, fortissimo kind of dynamic here. Logical editor is a game changer in Cubase. I 100% agree. I've used it a bit, but I've really not scratched the surface near as much as I should do. Maybe we need to do a video on Project Logical Editor. So we'll get to there, because at that point we're going to have to change our articulation. Cool. So nice. So I think that's working pretty good. What I'm going to do is copy this over to Arraya as well now, because I think using a combination of these two libraries is going to really work for us today. So I'm going to come up here, and then I'm going to find, let's find our spiccato fast here. I'm going to copy this up to our spiccato fast. There it is. I'm going to rename it as we go. So spiccato fast. Just going to have a listen to that in isolation too. Nice. What we're getting is we're getting the kind of crispness of Arraya, which is a bit of a drier library, a bit of a more modern symphonic sound. And then we're getting the lovely sort of bloom and hall and kind of nice rich sound of Dolce, which is a chamber library, but it really works well for symphonic scoring too, or maybe not symphonic, but cinematic scoring. Together, they really work nicely. So can you hear how both are adding something slightly different? Arraya has a little bit more bite, and Dolce has this more kind of warm, natural, maybe slightly more kind of traditional character. And the How to Train Your Dragon soundtrack, I'm not sure where the original was recorded. I know the new one has been recorded at Air Studios in London, or at least partly recorded there. It has quite a big sound. It's not a tight scoring stage sound. It's a lot more expansive than that. So that's what we're going to try and capture here. But I kind of want to do it by using a combination of both, the focus of some of these libraries and the bigger, more expansive sound of other parts of the libraries as well. So let's just take these two. Nice. What we're going to do is we're going to come back up here and we're going to get our second violins in as well. We're just going to build this up bit by bit. Now, I may just put these on Dolce. I may do the same thing again and layer them on both. Not everything needs to be layered 2 or 3 times. Really depends on the part each, part plays, should I say, or the focus each part plays, and just the general busyness of the track. So this is what our second violins are doing. Let me just go and then we've got the same thing going on here. Here we go. Then when we get to there, we'll change, but together, these parts now sound like this. You'll see it's pretty much playing the same thing, but there's a little subtle difference at the beginning of the phrase, which just adds a nice bit of harmonic interest. Hi there, Taro. And then, of course, we get to that point. We'll probably tackle that point separately. We'll just start layering this up, and then we will go from there. Let's get our violas in. So this is what our violas are doing. Bit strange by themselves, but we certainly know that that first part could be done nicely using the violas inside a dolce, and again the spiccato sound I think is going to be lovely for these. We may layer these with the rare. Again, we'll just see as we go. If you butcher this work, I will never forgive you. I don't think I'm capable of butchering it, purely because it's John Powell, not because of me. I can butcher anything, but I've relied on the master, and you know, I'm staying in my lane, you know, and I think it's going to be fine. I pretty much just copy what he's done, and now I'm putting it on some really nice libraries. So I'm hoping that that is going to absolve me of any possibility of messing this up too badly. But in fairness, I have got a habit in life of messing up things that shouldn't be messed up pretty easily. So again, with tutti sections, kind of because there's so much going on, each individual thing is not quite as heard. So you can be a little bit more loose with this stuff. But I'm still getting some random velocity in there. We may change the randomness of the notes as well. Let's have a listen to this. So we're going to want to hear this on its own. Fun times, but with the rest of it sounds like this. Let's get this down where we want it roughly, and then let's just use the strings because we don't want to hear the piano. Just starting to come together now. You can start to hear this stuff builds up. Without those violas, it's really beautiful, you know, but it's sort of these dancing broken chords. These violas anchor it. They're playing E, or I think it actually could be B. It doesn't really matter what it is, it's a B. But basically, these are holding down this chord by playing this consistent note over which everything else can dance. That's when things start to come to life here. Now, let's take a little look at what we have going on in our cello. Really simple, and it's going to be the exact same thing in the bass, an octave lower. It's just two big notes, an E, which is our root note, and then an octave down. So you get this E, then you get a big octave down. Yes, Ollie, Adam, that's my name. Tom's saying it's one of the greatest modern day orchestral scores. I agree. I definitely agree. Okay, so I think I'm going to use our beautiful Mockup stuff here. So Mockup cello in Dolce. Might also use a rare again, but this is where the Mockup part of it comes in, because as we build this up, we'll figure out what we need. Right now, I think we'll just get away with this. So, and we're going to want this big. Here we go. And we can sort of bring it down. There we go. Okay. Let's listen to those strings in isolation. Nice. So you can see that dive down in the octave. It's the same note, it's an E, but dive down into the octave just gives it more power on that second pass of this. Beautiful way of just creating more drama before we go into the big main theme. And we just pretty much do the exact same thing here with our basses, but they're going to be an octave lower. So same thing, Mockup bass. In limited edition of the soundtrack, you can listen to Powell's MIDI mockups. Don't worry, your mockup will sound a lot better than JP. I wouldn't be 100% sure of that, but hey, you know, maybe we'll get close-ish. Who knows? And if we don't, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, we'll just see where we can get to. I'm just giving you a disclaimer here in case it all goes wrong. So everything an octave lower. And let's just make sure that's all sounding nice. Very nice, big, beefy, as you can hear. Ooh, see, Dolce just sounds huge. I mean, it's chamber strings, but it sounds like an army of strings sometimes. This is a very common orchestral technique. Cello, root notes, double basses, root notes, an octave lower. So you have the root notes across two octaves, just a beautiful, big, wide sound. And that's pretty much all our strings for the first part. So. Nice, starting to come together nicely there. Okay, what should we do next? Well, tell you what we do have here, which is pretty cool. So we don't have bagpipes in Audio Imperial Library, but I do have bagpipes on my computer. I think these are supplied by Native Instruments, and there are bagpipes in the score. Well, these are actually Elam pipes, so they're Irish bagpipes. That's what they play. And they're quite in the background, but they really add a lot of character. If you've seen the film, if you know the kind of tone of the film, these touches just add this kind of folk Celtic-like character. We'll put some reverb on these and blend them into the mix as we go. But right now we'll just... See how they just instantly add that flavor, right? It's like as soon as you hear that, you know, you just start to get that sense of How to Train Your Dragon. Beautiful way of just using what we might call special instruments or specific instruments to add flavor. This happened in this film. It happens in lots of films. You know, Lord of the Rings is a classic example. Lots of things in there, dulcimers and hardinger fiddles and things, just to provide a sense of like these different worlds. It's really nicely done in here because again, this is a big orchestral piece, but we have these bagpipes just in the background, which are just adding some flavor. And they make it sound huge, right? As soon as you put those bagpipes in, it's like, you're like, oh yeah, this sounds like How to Train Your Dragon now. I feel like AAA composers record live so much they don't focus on their mock-ups enough. I think it's true, Peter. I think that's definitely true. Because they're writing fast, you know, and they know they've got a $1.5 million music budget, probably more than that, $2-3 million music budget sometimes, for all the players and the studios and the flights and the orchestrators and all that stuff. If I knew that, you know, I was recording my music at Air Studios or Abbey Road with London Symphony or the best London players, or if I was doing it at the Sony stage or something, I probably wouldn't worry too much about my mockups. I mean, sometimes my mockups don't sound great and I'm not working with those orchestras. So, you know, I can't blame people who are working with them for occasionally skipping over. Yeah, Brandon, I think you're right. It's like, you know, you got to convey the message, right? Same with like storyboards and things, you know, you're just sketching and you're getting an idea of what's going to happen because you know the money and the talent's there to turn that into a reality. So sometimes you don't worry too much about that stuff. Okay, let's get the high woodwinds in now. They're at the very beginning of this doing something not all that exciting. They're kind of almost doing the same, or they kind of sound a bit like the bagpipes in a way. They're providing that kind of drone-like quality. I think we can put these, we do have, let me duplicate this. I'm just going to create a woodwind ensemble. We're going to use some individual woodwind instruments, but we're also going to use ensembles when we can. Here we go. Woodwind ensemble. There it is. Lovely. Yes, let's replace that. Probably keep it all modern mix and stuff. We'll take the reverb off though, because I will use other reverb. Do some housekeeping here. Call this woodwind ensemble. Okay, nice. So yeah, let's just pop that in and then we'll see what these are providing to the piece at this point. So they are just providing this really nice sort of drone-like quality. And I'm just going to indicate, usually when players play, not always, but the default would almost be to sort of hit a note with a bit of attack and a bit of force. And then as the note goes further along, just back off a little bit. So it has this kind of a shape. You can see the envelope I have here, a higher beginning and then coming down a little bit. Players don't have to play that way. If they were instructed to play differently, they would. There's lots of different ways to play, but this, especially for instruments that use breath, is kind of the way you'd often play. You're sort of hitting the note with a bit of attack to get it going, and then you're backing off a little bit. So we're just using some mock-up techniques to kind of simulate that. Again, it's all subtle. So what I'm going to do is just pop all this stuff, not those, yeah, up here into a sketch folder. Let me just add, can I do a folder? Yes, there we go. Sketches, so we can quickly mute those as we're going, so we don't have to keep doing that. I'll just pop all that into our sketches track, and then nice. So you can hear they're adding just this nice big solid. Did you not know we recorded a bagpipes library, Ollie? Maybe it was while you were away. Yeah, we did a whole bagpipes library. No, it's not. It's Native Instruments, I think. I'm actually not sure what it's from. I just typed in bagpipes into Contact 7. They're not genuinely bagpipes, they're eland pipes, but it's sort of got the character. Yeah, I found some. I've used a few. I'm not going to lie. I've used a few things that may not be strictly Audio Imperia, but most of them are our good friends at Native Instruments, so I don't feel too bad. And the bulk of this is Audio Imperia. So hey, look, it's fine. It's all going to be good. These woodwinds are Audio Imperia. So just a drone-like quality. If you think about bagpipes and a lot of Celtic music, or a lot of music in general, folk music, it's often based around drones. John Powell was just kind of creating that feeling of the drones in the woodwinds. It's a tomatone. I was tempted to put a tomatone in, be like, I can't find bagpipes, so just use a tomatone. I may do a whole, maybe I'll do a whole stream just using nothing but a tomatone, see what we can make with it. Okay, so we have those. Let's do these low woods. Now, I might just put them in the same ensemble patch. Maybe I'll split them up. I'll split them up because it makes things easy for us to look at them. So these are our highs, duplicate. Wait a second for my relatively slow computer. Always scares me when things pause because I'm like, have we lost it? But it doesn't look like it. Let me just do a quick save though while we're here. Automaton would be superb. I agree. I think it would be how to train your automaton. That's maybe a whole maestro course there. How to train your automaton. Would you guys buy? $899, 46 hours of teaching. Cool. We're going to do the same thing here. And these woodwinds will sound better when we add some reverb because they're going to want to be pushed back. Again, we're talking about a bigger space than what some of these libraries have been recorded in, but that's great because we have some slightly drier libraries, which is really good, you know, great focus and clarity. A little bit of reverb will just bed them in, and then we're combining them with slightly more expansive libraries like Poseidon and like Dolce. Everything together is going to sound really nice, I think. So you can hear just nice low basic stuff, and we don't actually have woodwinds that go that low. That's easily fixed. It should be easily fixed. There we go. Let me just open that up. Oh, where is... Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. So there we go. Cool. Nice. I will fix them up in a second. Don't know why I can't see. Let me just replace that with Contact 7. There we go. And I can bring this up here. Nucleus. And woodwind ensemble. Load this up. Yeah, there isn't that many. I agree, Tom. Maybe a gap in the market. Oh, and that's what I was going to do. Load this up. I was going to go to advanced. Let me just make that easier for you guys to see. Change our range. Really nice thing that you can do here. We can change this as low as we want. We'll go low. We'll go low. I mean, I think it's going to sound fine in the context of this. This gives us a lower range. So listen now. And then when we go down to the octave. Yes, that's what we wanted. Beefy. Like all those great big contra, you know, bass clarinets and contra bassoons and things. That's what we're kind of imitating. And again, sounds a bit bagpipe-like. So here's where we're at. Hurdy-gurdy Brahm for a custom. That's cool. I don't think I've made any Brahms with hurdy-gurdies before. I want to hear that. Tell us what track that's in, Peter, because I want to hear that. That's the way to do it. Okay, let's get these trombones in. Yeah, why not? Let's do the trombones. So we'll probably use a combination of Jaeger and maybe Poseidon as well. I've got it loaded up. Jaeger is going to be great for this though. Again, haven't put any reverb on these trombones yet, so they may sound a little bit... Same thing here. We're going to want to sort of do this. And then we'll sort of fix all this up as we go. Da, 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 da. You got to make the noises, otherwise it doesn't work as well. All part of the fun. Yeah, you definitely got to try things. You definitely got to try things. So you can see it's interesting in the score here, we start off with these low trombones, and then in the second blast, John Powell uses the trombones spread out more and a higher register. Just again, combination of two things. Everything's diving an octave, all the low stuff, the basses and things like that. Some of the other stuff is going up. It's just spreading the range out and making everything sound bigger. Okay, so. Nice. Okay, and we'll refine all the playing as we go. For now, we'll just get it in. Cool. What else do we have? Well, let's maybe put these on Poseidon as well. Let me just see what they sound like on Poseidon. Nice. They're giving us that roomier sound. I think these two libraries are going to work really well together. The same way I love combining Dolce and Area. I think I'm going to really start loving to combine Dolce, Poseidon and Jaeger. Nice. See, it's giving us all that like low mid character. Jaeger's a bit more modern, hyped, hybrid focus. Sounds great, but sort of a bit more cutting. Poseidon got this beautiful organic quality. Together. Just brilliant. I love combining libraries like this. Really good. So. Nice. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to take the lowest note and we're going to put it in the Poseidon bass trombone. Because look, if you've got a bass trombone in a library, you should be using it. It's in the rules, the sample library rules. Nice. Just got that wider kind of bore to it. You know, it's just a great sounding instrument. Nice. Starting to sound good. Okay, what else do we have here? So we've got this tuba, which we will use our nucleus tuba for. That's doing the same as the low strings, as you might imagine. So here we go, here we go, here we go. Let's get our tuba here. We got one inside a nucleus, lovely tuba, or it's two tubas actually, but they're just going to provide nice, warm, round bottom. Sounds a bit weird, but you know what I mean. Musically, nice, warm, round bottom to this, which is really important in orchestral music. Got to get the music. Hello, Hackatori, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us. So. Yeah, we don't want quite as much separation. See, that's too much of a dip down. Player wouldn't really do that, not in a big piece like this or this moment. Okay, so. You see what those tubas are adding is that kind of lower but warmer kind of bass element. And the same thing here. We're going to want to just take our range down a little bit here. Ooh, just down by one. Player's not quite hitting that low E, which I think is in the score. See how that sounds just huge, that second statement of this big E chord, where everything dives down and up. Nice. Okay, so all together we now have this. We carry on. Okay, so we're nearly done with this piece. Now we do have a couple of things going on. We have this in the trumpets, which we will definitely put in now. It's a little phrase. Again, John Williams, John Powell. John Williams too, but John Powell, who we're talking about today, master at kind of creating these little flourishes. So important for just keeping music interesting. So let me just close that down so I can make this easier for you guys to see. And then we're just going to use our key switching here. Here we go. So we're going to want the staccatissimo to maybe probably just the sustains. We'll try it. We have this. There we go. Okay, nice. Now these are quite quiet in the mix, you know. They're not something that you hear really loudly, so we may bury these a little bit. Nice, okay. We may need to layer these up to get the best of both worlds. That's completely fine. Okay, same thing here. We're really going to want to... Nice, okay. And what I'm probably going to do is layer these with Poseidon and maybe make Poseidon the dominant character in these. We shall see. So let me take a look at Poseidon, what we've got going on here. That's not Poseidon. That's Poseidon. Oh, there we go. I'll close that down too. And we'll use staccatissimo. Nice. So let's have a listen to what these sound like. Nice. That sounds good. Cool. And then that section there is where the trumpets really swell at the start of that melody. Let's just have a listen to what that sounds like in the context. They're probably going to be a bit loud. We'll bring them down. That sounded good to me, but just a bit loud. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be lazy. Could use expression, but I'm being lazy. And to be honest, they're probably mixed by a mixer a bit quieter in the beginning and then... You know, it's not uncommon when these things are being mixed that you're mixing mic positions, you know, trumpets standing far away, then you bring some closer mics in, you know, bring them a bit more in the mix. The invincible title card, it does, yeah. Might use fluid brass, might do, we'll see if we need them pocate. Nice, and then here we go. Let's just have a little listen. Second time around. Cool. And I'm just going to check on the Poseidon one as well. Make sure they sound kind of realistic. So with the Poseidon one, what do we have going on here? It's just the sustains. Maybe we... Let's take a look what we need here. Might just need... Because the staccatissimos in Poseidon are awesome. Maybe we'll just have them playing. Sounds a bit strange by itself, I know. But I think it might work. And then to that sustain. We're going to want to bring that out. Beautiful. Okay. We shall see how that goes as we go. That will do for now, though. What else do we need to add here? So we have all of this stuff. We've got some percussion, which I'll maybe add at the end. I think we've got everything in terms of, there's no woodwind shorts or anything here. Let's get up to this point. So we've done all our strings. We've done our highs and lows. We've got no shorts at this point. We've done our little trumpets. We've got no horns. Horns are reserved for the big section. We've got all our low brass. I may put some Talos low brass in here because why not? Because I mean, we're going a bit larger than life. So let me just show you. If I get Talos low brass and I bring these up, I'm going to probably use the Mercato longs in Talos low brass just to give us a bit more accent. Where are we here? Okay. So it's just that initial attack. Same thing here. Envelope. We're going to get that low E. Oof. Okay, and then we're going to blend that into taste. So nice. So what I'm going to want to do is just bring those down maybe slightly. So there, something like that. We'll do all the refining as we go, but that's sounding pretty good to me. So we have our first section pretty much done, apart from our percussion, which we'll put in, and some harp as well. That'll all be stuff we'll get to at the end. And we should have our bagpipes here as well. What we're going to do is we're definitely going to want to put those bagpipes in a kind of space. I'll just use a Seventh Heaven reverb here. I like this one. This is pretty good. This will instantly make the bagpipes just sound a little bit further back in a space. Yeah, really helps. Yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. We'll do a bit of mixing at the end if we need to, but for now that's fine. So what we want is to take these bagpipes out of the sketch because they're not really a sketch. There we go. And then we'll mute our bagpipes, just pop them at the top there as we go. A good question. So I really like Seventh Heaven. I have a few different reverbs. I use Valhalla stuff quite a lot. I've got some old East-West Spaces stuff that I use sometimes. I think Berlin Studio as well. Yeah, I'm not a reverb expert by any means, so I tend to just stick to a few things that I know work really well. Seventh Heaven works really well for me. If I want creative reverb, I use something like Black Hole or Valhalla Shimmer. Cubase has a good Shimmer plugin in it now as well. But I keep it pretty simple. Curious if you guys have a reverb that kind of sounds like where you recorded AI libraries. That's a good question. Yeah, I think, you know, with me, usually I'm reverbing everything a little bit. So what I'll often do is, you know, if I'm using Nucleus or Jaeger, I'll reverb them a little bit. And then if I'm using Poseidon, I'll reverb that less, you know, but sort of everything gets the same, something like a Seventh Heaven reverb, just to keep it all glued together. But obviously the drier libraries get a bit more Seventh Heaven and the wetter libraries get a bit less, you know, but I don't know that we have anything that sort of matches exactly the halls that we've used, but I usually find I can just sort of get things to gel pretty, you know, just by using something like a Seventh Heaven reverb. I say that, I mean, I'm not by any means the best at getting that stuff kind of sounding perfect, but yeah, for me, that kind of stuff usually works. What we're going to do now, what I'm going to do is a little technique here, if I can. Might use some envelope. See how that envelope's just shortening the release? So it's really, because we're using this as our kind of drier sound, I'm really taking the tail out of it, so it sounds a lot more focused. Just helping because we have the nice lovely sort of natural spiccato of Dolce, and then we have something that's really quite tight and focused here in Area. Cool. I really like Rom as well. Yeah, fine. Yeah, I've heard that's really good. I do have it, but I don't use it that much, and I really should. Because a lot of people say the same thing. It's really good. And when I have used it, I've always really liked it. There's loads of great reverbs out there now. But yeah, I've used Seventh Heaven, sometimes Spaces, and quite often Valhalla, Room, and Vintage Verb as my go-tos. But as I say, I'm not the most sort of brilliant when it comes to reverb. So, you know, I just sort of use things that sound good, that put things in similar spaces, that can give everything a bit of gloop, and then we go from there. Okay, I think that's good enough now. We'll keep going, and then we'll come back and do anything that we want to do when it comes to things like, you know, percussion and stuff. What I think we want to do now is get this this melody going. So we'll put this on the horns to start off with, because the horns are really what we hear, and we're going to use Talos. I think it might be 8 or 12 horns in the score. Can't remember 100%, but we're going to use the whole Talos 12 horns, and we're going to go for it because, you know, and then we may combine that with Poseidon as well. We'll see how it goes. Here's Talos. So we're just going to use key switching to try and get this sounding as sort of natural and lively as we can. Here we go. So I reckon the first two could be staccatissimo, not staccatissimo, sorry, marcatos. We'll just play along and see what we get. So short marcatos, maybe longs. We want that kind of, okay. Let's just try the sustains and see. Yeah, well, maybe just keep it sustained for now. And as we lay this up and put it all together, we'll figure out what we need. Dun, dun. And then we're going to have maybe Mikado to end it there. Something like that for now. We'll do that. Let me probably maybe keep these. Yeah, nice. Maybe the same thing here. Nice. Let's just try. I think I quite like the Mikado. Might end up layering them. We're gonna have to do the same thing here. Get our range up. It's easy done. Love this about pyramid. So we're gonna want them. Cool. So let's see what we want here. Maybe keep. Let's just try those as Mikado shorts. Oh, got to remember, I got to do the range for each one of these, so we're using that one. Yeah, that might work. We'll sort of come back and rework all this as we hear it all. So we definitely want to go back there. Obviously, that could well be our legato. Nice. Legato is not as prominent in brass as you might sometimes think, but little lines like that, descending lines, ascending lines, you know, when you're going in step, definitely would be legato all day long, I think. So this will take a little bit of programming because this is our lead line, but we'll just get it in for now. And then as we put everything in, we'll start to hear what works, what doesn't work. That's already, I can hear, going to have to be a sustain. And we'll probably end up layering these. Nice, okay. Then that's probably going to be sustained as well because these are quite broad notes. And probably make all that sustained there. And then as you might imagine what happens here is you get the same thing. The brass comes down a little bit and comes up. Little break for a moment to breathe. And then we get this beautiful. When you hear that in context, you'll understand sort of how and why that works. So we may end up doubling that with another version of Talos or something else to make that work. But for now, we've got it in. That's the most important thing. With the strings, this is what we have. It's going to sound good. Sound a bit weird at the moment, but this is what I love about doing mock-ups of other people's stuff. Like, you put stuff in, you're like, oh, I don't really understand how that's going to work, and why is that sounding like that? When you put it all together, you're going to see how this works. These are double with trumpets, and the trumpets are the secret sauce here. So maybe we'll put them in next, because the trumpets are doing something really beautiful. Pretty much the same melody, but they're adding little harmonic flourishes to it, and that's what really thickens all this up. So let's pop them in. We may need to do them across two trumpet lines. We'll see how it goes. I just did this orchestration for a cover. Didn't think I'd get sick of the theme, but I'm close. Yeah, I can imagine. I think I saw that you did that. I think that we were planning hours and then you've done it and we thought, ah, cool. But it's a great one to do. I mean, why not? So this is what our trumpets do. What I'm going to do is just mute those at the end, because I'll probably put them on a different track. Make things easier for us. Yeah, let me just take them out the way for the moment. So if I make them an octave lower, we'll remember that they're not down that low. Okay, so let's see what we need to do here. Okay, so we got... First thing we need to do is make sure that that's a sustain and not a legato. Although we will make that first one legato, why not? Okay, cool. Beautiful. Just these little moments where you get these fourths and these fifths and things just sounds so cool. So let's see how we're gonna pop this in. Sorry, by the way, guys, I'm sorry for humming. I've realized I do that quite a lot now. Yeah, we don't want it to be too pop, you know, because that's just a bit intense. Again, we'll probably layer these either with Poseidon or with themselves to give everything a more even attack and flow and things. And then what I'm going to do is when we divide here, I'm just going to bring a tiny bit. Nice, that's going to sound good, I think. And then, again, same thing here. One thing I would say is when you're sort of doing mock-ups like this, right, here's a good example of, let me do this sustained. Have a listen to this. One of the mock-up mistakes I see quite a lot, which is just easily fixed, is just tiny gaps between notes. There's no way a player, unless they were doing a literal legato, there's no way a player could play each of these notes and not have a tiny little distinction between them. And it feels naturally kind of a bit synthy and computerized. With a little bit of a gap, it's only a small difference, but it makes a big difference. Just helps separate those notes, which is what you would expect to hear. So yeah, that's always a good technique. And we'll do a little ramp up here. Dun, dun, dun. Same thing here, kind of little gaps here. We don't want everything to be connected. That's just not how players would play. Nice. Now I think we can keep this all going the way it is. What we're going to want to do is these trumpets play more of a harmonic role here, because if I remember rightly, the high strings take over. So we can bring them down a bit. So again, tiny little gaps here. And I may not make that staccato. We'll see. But because this is more of a supporting role, I may put the staccato in Poseidon and then we'll have a bit of both. Otherwise, we get that kind of, even if I take the velocity down, it just feels a bit... We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. But keep going with this. Okay, nice. And I'll just take them down again because we're splitting the notes here. Another mug players need to breathe. little bit more of a gap there, because I'm going to say after a phrase, after what we've been playing here, this would be a moment where the players would just take a little breath more maybe than they did. And then we'll figure out this part at the end. Let's just have a listen. So here we go. Needs work, but we're getting there. We're getting there. I promise you it'll sound good. How to control the sound of the high strings so they don't sound synthetic and unnatural, just with plugins in mixing or something from the library itself and dynamics. In terms of how I'm controlling them here, so I'm using some velocity, not much, just a little bit of velocity to vary the notes here, but there's no mixing so far. We've done nothing. This is just straight out of Dolce. Oh, sorry, this is a rare. So you can see these downbeat notes. I'm just adding a little bit more velocity to give them a bit more of an accent. And then some of these notes in between, I'm just bringing the velocity down a bit. I think changing the velocities even just a tiny bit helps to add a little bit of naturalness and volume differentiation. Sometimes it'll trigger a slightly different dynamic as well. All of those things just help make it not sound so robotic. And then we got the same thing going on in Dolce, literally just using velocity at this point in time and making sure we're choosing the right articulation, which is the spiccato, which is a way of playing that, you know, the players sort of bounce off the strings a bit more and are lighter with the bowing much shorter. So we're going to bring those trumpets down a bit. Trumpets are sort of not as loud as you might think. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're really loud instruments, but like sometimes people mix them a bit high in mixes. I have done that as well. They blend a bit more, you know, they've got a natural top end to them that jumps through without needing to be front and center. When we add reverb to this, it's going to sound better. Let's now just pop this on Poseidon and mix it in. No problem at all. If you have any questions, yeah, I'm happy to help as best I can. And we are going to make that Marvel fanfare that we did the other day available very, very soon now. I've had time to go through and clean it up, so I've just got to have one more look at it, and then I'll make it available, and hopefully that will be of help to some people. So yeah, I will make that available on our Discord as soon as possible. It should only be a few days now. I don't know if I'll be able to make this one available, but going forward, when we can, we'll make things available if and when we can. Okay, so let's pop this in. I haven't used Poseidon as much as Jaeger, as you might imagine. It's a newer library. I mean, I've used it a bit. Sounds incredible to me, but yeah, this is sort of my first time really digging into some of these core articulations in as much detail. So we're going to be blending these. What we're going to want to do is bring these up. We're going to want everything playing near enough maximum. So we're going to want to be this together. I think these are going to sound really good. We're going to have the natural room tone of Poseidon. Nice. We'll fix that end up. So again, let's play these together now and see what they sound like and mix them to taste. Nice. Starting to come together. What I am going to do with Talos, something that I quite often do with Talos, is just scoop a tiny bit of the middle out and brighten it up a bit. It's just something I do most of the time. So it's a really subtle thing, but Talos has this slightly closer sound, which gives it a bit more of a roomier sound. Fantastic for certain uses, fantastic for this too. But sometimes when you want it to sound a bit more embedded into a brass ensemble, just to take a little bit of the mid out will help it just sit in. So it's really subtle, but in the brass ensemble, it sounds better. Take the mute out. Trumpets sound muted. They could well be. Let me have a little look. Although I quite like that sound. Let's take a look. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Yes, you're right. Muted sustains. That would make sense. So this is me not knowing. There we go. And let's just make these even shorter. And same thing here. I definitely want to make that. There we go. Take them. I agree. Free the trumpets. Although, hey, I like that muted trumpet sound, right? I'm going to go. Sometimes a blend of a muted trumpet and a non-muted trumpet can make it sound, I don't know, right? If you listen to a lot of film soundtracks, the trumpets have this really particular, beautiful sound that sometimes doesn't get captured by some libraries. And sometimes, I don't know what it is, but it's a slightly boxy but really beautiful cinematic sound that sometimes is missed. These trumpets sound great though, so. Okay, da-da-da-da-da. We'll figure all that out. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double these Talos with the Jaeger 6 horns. Sounds a bit weird, but I think it's going to work. I will explain why. It's just the best of both worlds, essentially. So let's just listen to these. Same thing here. And maybe use portato for these. Nice. Yeah, that sounds good to me. Yeah, this is starting to come together nicely, I think, because we're going to get the pair of Talos. Same thing here. Bum, 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 bum. Just want sounding good. Yep. Yep. So that's what I want. And then we've got, oh, actually, we'll use legato here. So I think this will work nicely just to create a nice transition. Yep. Nice. Yeah, that sounds good to me. In fact, what we'll do is we'll make that whole thing legato. I think combined with Talos, that'll sound really good. And I'll probably just keep the whole thing. Sounds a bit weird on its own, but I think it's going to work. I will just separate those two. Maybe just experiment with making that one portato. There it is. Although I'm not going to be able to get... No, I'm going to keep it all legato. So I'm not going to be able to get the nice... See how you get the kind of slightly closer, more intimate sound of Jaeger. Intimate's not really the right word. There's still a huge brass section. But then with Talos, you just get that full, rich... together. Nice, and I think that's going to work with all the strings and everything. So, and I want everything up there. And then, yeah, keep all that legato. We have no reason to change it. Nice. Okay. See, those trumpets are still just poking out a bit too much to me. These are really sort of quite naturalistic trumpets. That's better. Nice. Let's move on to our trombones and all that good stuff and get some of this harmony in. Trombones are doing this. So it's all just chords for the trombones and the low brass. Nice, big, rich chords starting at bar 5. So we're just going to pop them in. They should be pretty straightforward. And we'll probably add some gaps again where breath should be. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and do all of that right now. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Nice, even, and then, and then we're going to want something like that. Thank you, Kaya. Yeah, I think it's going to come together. This is the great thing about mockups, right? They build, like, they don't sound, you know, something's missing, and then you add something, and you're like, oh, that's what was missing, and we're not going to worry too much about getting these precise, partly because we don't have time. Secondly, because again, it's all harmony here, right? In the full scheme of things, we're not listening to these trombones, you know, as individual instruments by themselves. They're just going to be filling this sort of role. Sounds a bit weird again, but together. And then with everything else. We're getting there. Bit of work to do with those, but that's fine. As we go through, we can sort of get everything. Nice. Okay, so let's go in. Are we going to add the chorus? Maybe if we got time and we think it's going to work, we'll just put some bits in. We'll see if they work. Yeah, maybe we'll add chorus. Oh, I don't want to do that though. I want to do that and that. Okay, so we're going to want to add our we are going to want to add our bass trombone as well. We'll do that in a minute. We'll do our low brass. Here we go. So let's get that in. And this is all going to be pretty loud. And again, little spaces here. Brass players are not going to be able to play that kind of. Cool. And we're just going to copy that over to the low brass. Have a listen to that on its own. So really nice, simple stuff in the low brass altogether. So. Okay. Nice. And what we're going to do is just come in here, close up some of those gaps a little bit so it's not too sort of static. Trying to find it. And we'll then sort of do some mock-up stuff just to make it sound a little bit. Probably not going to play quite that. Yeah, maybe more that sort of level. They're not going to be playing full blast there. Same there. We'll finesse all that as we go because we'll just get everything in for now. Okay, let's go and fix up the rest of these violins. So we have this going on. So let's take a look and think about what we can do with these. Maybe I'll fix them in Dolce first. So we have, let's open up Dolce Legato. Should only take a second or two. This is where the violins change. Essentially, the trumpets and the French horns are playing the melody for the first part, and then the trumpets become a little bit more harmonic in nature, and the violins take over with more of a kind of soaring melody. Sounds weird. Sorry, we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. Oh, I've let that go. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look here. Make sure we have everything where we want it. Yep, nice legato. That's there. And then we can start to think about how this line goes. So let's listen to it on the spiccatos first and see. Yeah, nice. Okay, so we'll connect all this up and then there'll be a nice flow in legato line and it'll sound beautiful on Dolce, I think. And then we might add a Rea just to give it some extra sweetness. Okay, so let's see how we want this to go. So we want these all connected up. I'm going to bring our sustain in so we can do re-trigger the same notes. It's a beautiful feature on Dolce that we can have these same note re-triggers. So where we have these same notes, I can use the sustain pedal. If I played it in, I could do it that way, but I haven't played it in. So let's see. Let's have a little listen to that. Oh, might help if I've not got everything else soloed. Oh, done the same thing again here. Oh, my bad. I think what's happening here. There we go. That's better. Same thing there. We're going to want moment where we re-trigger because we have the same note. It's essentially like the player playing the same note but up bow, down bow. There we go. So there we go. And move that. Beautiful. And then we don't want those in. Okay, I'm just going to go back here again. Listen to those. I think I'm going to sort of blend the shorts and the legato at that point to sort of get a nice smooth transition between the two. Okay. Do this. Oh, there we go. We're definitely going to want that up there. So let's listen to it. So you're going to hear how that line works now. Got this beautiful, this is another thing that happens often in How to Train Dragon, and it's just a great piece of symphonic writing, is melody and counter melody, or sort of call and response. You have a beautiful example of this here. I'm going to really bring those up for that moment. So you have this thing going on in the French horns, and then it's sort of like a call, then a response in the upper strings, these high first violins. Really, really nice writing. Thank you very much. Beautiful. And same thing here. We're just going to mute that stuff because that's not happening. Same up here as well. We just want the legatos playing those lines. So let's see what we have going on in those second violins, because there's some really nice counter writing going on there. Let's just take this whole thing. There it is. And then copy that over to our Dolce second violins legato, which sounds equally beautiful. Just some really nice sort of counter writing going on here, you know, so very subtle differences between the two lines. Something that John Williams, I keep saying John Williams, John Powell. Sorry, John Powell. He's not watching, but you know, I don't think he needs my MIDI mock-up advice. I think he's probably doing quite okay for himself. But yeah. John Powell really gets these nice sort of similar but slightly different violin lines going on. Some of it's the same. And then we'll just get these little re-triggers in, which I'm just writing in by hand. There it is. Same thing there. A re-trigger. Okay. So, and do we have any other ones? Yes, we do. We have one more there as well. Let me make sure that we can hear our all that legato. Beautiful. And then something else happens in the second violins, which we'll add in. But altogether, those violins just work really. Let me just show you the two violins together. Really similar lines, but just beautiful sort of counter writing here. So just these little harmonic flourishes. Sure thing. Yeah, I can show you how it works. So re-triggering is in legato. If you have two notes that are different and then you overlap them, I don't actually think you need to overlap them these days in most modern engines, but if you overlap them, you'll get a sort of nice smooth change from one note to the other. Now, a lot of libraries have it so that if you have the same note play, it will just essentially re-trigger the exact same note, and it'll sound a little bit what we might call machine gun-like. It'll sort of sound like the same notes being played over and over. With Dolce, we have these beautiful re-triggers. So they've been sampled in a way that if you play the same note, but you use the sustain pedal, it'll trigger a different version of the same note, which gives it this lovely natural quality. And how you do that is using the sustain pedal. So if you have a sustain pedal, you're playing this in live, you can just put your foot on the sustain pedal and that will give you what you need. If you don't have a sustain pedal, or you're doing what I'm doing and copying and pasting this in, you can just use these moments. You can see here's the one note, and then we have the same note here. And then we have a tiny gap, but what I want to do is use my sustain here to make sure that I play the same note, but I trigger the rebow, so I get a really nice natural sound to it. So you can hear when we play the same notes, as you can see at the end of bar 9 here, it's not going to sound machine gunny. It sounds like a player really sort of playing and using the bow in a way that's much more articulate. And I've got the same thing going on there as well. Just a tiny little gap there so I can kind of show you guys. And same thing there, I've actually missed one. So you could hear that sounded okay, but it just sounds a little bit robotic. And then with that, just really adds this nice natural kind of quality to it. It's a really important thing with legato, because if you don't have the reed trigger, if you try and play the same note, it can sound just not brilliant sometimes, and you might have to do a bit of work to get it to sit in. With Dolce, no worries about that. You can just use this reed trigger, really nice natural sound. Yeah, it's a really, really useful feature, and I think it's really important for legato if you want a sort of natural line, because this is it, right? Like sometimes you want to play the same note 2 or 3 times, and you want that feeling of the player changing the bow, up bow, down bow, to get that articulation or re-articulation on the same note. Just breathe so much life into it. So yeah, you can hear now we've got where we've done all the re-articulations and everything. We just got this really nice. Beautiful. And with everything else, nice. It's starting to come together. And then we have the same thing here. The second violins do something different to the first violins at this point. So we take this, in fact, yeah, take that. I'm going to take it out of the spiccato because we don't want it in the spiccatos. I'm going to add it to this here. And then I'm just going to, these are all different notes. So I can just overlap these to ensure, like I said, I think you don't need to do that these days, but I'm just old fashioned and do it. So that's what happens in the strings, and it just creates this nice moment. And then we had to get to the ending there. Okay, let's carry on adding. I don't think we have any low strings or anything in here for this section here. So let's do our violas. Our violas doing something that's quite common in orchestral scoring, which is essentially just supporting the trombones. I wouldn't say violas and trombones are a super, super common pairing, but in a big tutti section like this, very often the violas won't play anything kind of unique to themselves because they wouldn't really be heard. But they can do a great job of supporting these middle textures. And that's what's going on here. So let me just show you. I'm going to put these on our viola marcatos, which I think we already have up and running. Maybe not. If not, they're going to sound great in the marcato because we'll get nice attack. Ignore that. That's all fixable. Ignore that. This is just where I haven't fully updated my template yet. Me being, there we go. So if I just reload these, I'll put them in contact 7. Dolce, violas, marcato. I haven't fully updated my template and where I've moved from different versions and battery saved and blah, blah, blah. Everything's a bit of a mess. This is just me being lazy. I really need a day just to come in and sort all that stuff out. Okay, so let's have a little look at what we have going on in these violas. We won't cover it in too much detail because it's all pretty simple stuff. But we do have a nice line at the end. So starting from bar 5, there they are. They're just going to support, but it's a really important texture, right? It really helps fill out. We bring them down to roughly where they need to be. So I'm just going to show you with the trombones kind of what this does. There's a sort of top endness to strings and a nice fizzy texture to strings that just help even trombones or, you know, big brass instruments cut through a bit more. Without. They really help to fill out that middle texture, which is sometimes. Nice. So they're doing a really important role, even though it's not something you might immediately hear, but it is really important, and quite a common role inside of the violas. You know, sometimes they do get a bit more of a supporting role, especially in big tutti writing like this, but it can't be overstated how important a role it can be sometimes. Okay, let's move over to our celli and add our celli in. This is some really nice writing on the celli here. So we have the cellis divided in the score, and they're just creating this beautiful, rich Now, what I'm probably going to do here is back that off at that point there. I'm going to take these and I'm going to add them to a celli legato. We may get the same contact issue here again. We'll see. That's okay if we do. Thank you, Peter. I think I'm gonna check yours out already, but maybe I didn't listen too much because I was terrified of what I was going to hear and start getting worried about my own. But I remember yours sounding pretty phenomenal as well. It's a great one to do. So this sounds a bit weird on its own because this is a little bit fast for what dolce is usually intended for. Sounds a bit weird, but listen how these sound together when this is just mixed in. Do you see how it just adds without you just missing? Sounds a little bit too Mockup, a bit marked, a bit separate. These sound a bit on their own, you know, because they're not really designed to play roles like this, but together sound really good. And in a full mix, come together quite nicely. So yeah, those celli are doing this really nice little sort of figure at that point. You don't really hear it super clear, but it just helps to add momentum. Really nice writing without a bit static, with just I think this is where it was great though. It was really cool. I really like the way that you put it all together. My computer specs are, you know, I'm not 100% sure at this point in time. I recently upgraded my RAM and I think I went to 128 gigs. I was on 64. I think I've gone double that now. The processor's relatively old. It's a Windows. I think it's an i9, but it's 4 or 5 years old now, but it was pretty powerful at the time. Yeah, and then so it's a pretty powerful computer, but it is 4 or 5 years old now, so it's getting on a tiny bit. SSD hard drives, you know, because I think that's pretty important if you're doing you know, sort of music work, especially if you're using lots of samples and things. So it's a pretty powerful computer. Certainly the RAM is pretty powerful, but it's old DDR3, I think, so it's not the best RAM. It could be DDR4. But yeah, I upgraded that because I just thought, why not? You know, I felt like I'd just be great to have kind of unlimited RAM as far as I was concerned. As you can see, I disable a lot of my tracks, so I'm very rarely using hardly any of my RAM really. But yeah, so it's a pretty powerful computer, but not absolutely, you know, ridiculously powerful. But yeah, it sort of gets the job done. Maybe it's getting a bit old at this point. I probably will have to replace it in the next 2 or 3 years, but I'm not thinking about that right now because that's a task in itself. Okay, let's get these basses in because then we're sort of done with the strings at this point. Basses divide at some points. That's just to fill out sometimes where some of the strings, you know, like for example, the celli, they split and do that nice little legato line. The basses divide at that point to sort of make up for the celli that are doing something different. That's very common. You'll find that in quite a lot of orchestral scoring. You know, sometimes basses will divide. It's less common in traditional music. Again, we'll look at finessing this if we need to, but we may not need to. So you can see where that line changes, that's where the bass is divided. That's just good orchestration. That's an orchestrator that's looked at the piece and said, cellos have moved off the root notes, so how are we going to fill them in? We'll just divide the basses. And strangely, sometimes divided instruments don't sound weaker. You might think, oh, if you have 8 basses and then suddenly you have 4 on one note, 4 on another, it's going to sound weak and flimsy. That's often not the case, because of the sort of psychoacoustic effect of these things. And obviously it doesn't matter for mock-up purposes. So yeah. So altogether, this is where we are at. Cool. We're starting to get there, I think. What I am going to do is I'm going to double these first violins in Dolce with Araya. Araya is just going to add a really nice sweetness to. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, pretty much leave it the way it is. Not the best MIDI program, but again, in tutti sections, not everything has to sound super, super realistic because you're not really hearing any one thing. If this was a solo violin in a really sparsely orchestrated piece, you might really want to focus on how that sounds. In a tutti section, not everything has to sound absolutely immaculate because it's more the overall effect. See, that's bringing out all that lovely kind of lush sound. Again, I'm pretty sure there's a bit of a mixing trick in here because this is all just on the first violins in the score. There's no way those first violins are competing with all the rest of the brass and everything else in a true orchestral setting. So my suspicion is they've, using a bit of beautiful mixing, jiggery pokery, but that's again very common in scoring setups because, scores are all about the final result. They're not intended to be played live in a pure sense. But it's all been orchestrated really well as well to make sure the brass dip down at this point, give the violins a chance to sort of break through. Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. Okay. As I said, we'll worry about finessing once we sort of have everything in. Okay, let's think what we need to do here. Let's maybe put our woodwind shorts in. So we have this happening in the woodwind shorts. Now I'm probably just going to use the ensemble patch for this. The woodwinds are going to be more of a texture. They're particularly at this point, they're not really doing anything other than supporting the violins. So what I might do is double this and make this my short patch. And then we'll add some reverb, and that's really going to help the woodwinds sort of blend into the mix a bit where they're supposed to be. So let me just make this contact 7 again, just so I don't get any weird things going on. Cool. Load up. There we go. Nice. Take the reverb off. Get rid of that. And then what we can do is this. So the woodwinds are doing something like this. They're basically where the violins take over the melody. As you can see, the violins are all about that line in the first half of this. So here. They change here. They change here. And I'm just going to... Cool. Worry about mixing as we go, but the woodwinds take over. So really clever orchestration again. It's all about thinking, what can we do? What instruments doing what sections are doing what? Violins are taking over from the trumpets with the melodic stuff here, or pseudo-melodic stuff. It's taking over that high end of the trumpets. Trumpets are going more chordal. What do we do if you don't have the woodwinds continue the short sort of fragments? It might sound a little bit like the rhythm drops, you know, so you need that carrying on. So here we go. It's really simple stuff, you know, just very simple. Now, what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to start coming in here. I'm going to start adding some reverb. And I'm just going to use my seventh heaven for this. I know that sounds good, and it has that kind of cinematic sound. So seventh heaven, it's going to make a big difference, particularly with reverb. So adding sort of, or in some ways pushing them back, taking them out of the mix a little bit, or pushing them back in the mix so they don't sound so. Cool, that's sounding good. Let's get our low woodwinds in. They are really just playing root notes. You know, they're just supporting the low brass and the low strings. Again, woodwinds are not the major feature here. There is a moment we're going to put in where they do take on a little bit more of a role. Same thing here. I'm going to give little breaks to all of these just so they don't sound too synthy and too much like they're just playing non-stop. Tiny little breaks. And then we'll tidy all that up because there's a few places we can create some more rhythmic interest. So the woodwinds are doing this. I'll just bring them in. Don't think they're going to play quite as loud as that. Nice. There's one more thing going on in the woodwinds, really, which is at the beginning here, the oboes are playing the melody. So let me get the oboes up to here. Oboes playing melodies in tutti sections is quite common because the oboes have a piercing tone. Things like clarinets, even flutes to an extent, although if they're high up, they can certainly pierce through, but they can get a bit muffled or a bit drowned out by brass. Oboes can pierce a bit more. So that kind of works quite nicely sometimes. We're not going to worry about programming these because, again, it's more about filling in this brass. It's really subtle, but you may just hear so yeah, you can just hear them kind of coming in. Just make sure I've programmed them. So I think, yeah, just had a wrong note there. Nice. And just make sure we have and I'll just show you what happens at the end, which is really nice. And this is what we're talking about with counter melodies. So these woodwinds do this at the end, which I may copy over to a couple of parts. So they do this. Put them on these high woodwinds here. Really nice writing there. And I'm going to show you how that works. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these over to our flutes as well. But I'm going to use the solo flute. So this nuclear solo flute, and that's going to give us a nice legato, which we can just layer in. Really nice. I like to use this technique a lot of just layering like an ensemble patch with a legato solo patch. Just gets best of both worlds. Really beautiful, because let me show you how this works. Let's do it with the strings, those strings, and we'll do it with the horns as well. Listen how the melody plays 3 times in each group, and each time it's slightly sort of different, different ranges, different kind of technique. Just sounds great. Strings. Beautiful, beautiful. You know, that's great orchestral writing there. Just this kind of call and response, each time slightly different. And then it just builds up this great big climax then. Really good orchestral writing. So, you know, that's always something good to play with. You know, you could have taken out the strings and the woodwinds and just had the first refrain on the brass, but then it would have just lost a bit of momentum. With this call and response thing, or with this kind of continuation in the melody, just a great way of adding interesting texture and interesting kind of continuation, and just using the orchestra, right? It's like you have a whole bunch of instrumentalists here, great instrumentalists, great sounds, great ranges. Use it all, you know, especially in these big climactic moments. So let's have a little look at where we're at. Nice. We'll just turn that down because the woodwinds are just, they would be a bit quieter compared to the rest of the brass. Nice. And then we'll get that ending part done if we have time. I think we'll probably have time. Okay, so this is coming together. Now what I'm going to do is take my Talos brass, just make sure we have, a little bit there. With the strings, I'm just going to add a touch of Seventh Heaven as well, just to gel them all together. But we don't want too much for these because we have Dolce. They're already providing this beautiful sound. So nice. And what I'm going to do is just add a touch of high end to those strings, pull a little bit out of the middle, just to sort of put them, make them a bit more cinematic. Cinematic stuff tends to have a bit more high end, a bit more low end. But we're not going to really mix this today. I'm just going to do this one thing, just because I think that'll help. That will do us for now. Nice. So what I'm going to do is just, again, a tiny bit of mixing here, not too much, but just, I'm going to pull out a bit of the middle here. So you can see this makes it sound closer to the mic and closer, smaller. When we take it out, they sound a bit thinner and a bit kind of more expansive in a way, really. We want all that middle for the brass and for the woodwinds and everything else. So taking that out is just going to help bed the strings in. You can see how it's just like, they don't sound quite as sort of full and thick, but in a good way. We kind of want them dancing more in the background then. Cool. I'm just going to copy the low line here onto our bass trombone. And then we'll get some percussioning. So the percussion will add a lot. I already have some percussion. Here's one I made earlier, kind of stuff going on. So I'm just going to take some of those. What I would do is finesse these sort of individually. Cool. Nice. And I'm just going to grab everything, just really slightly pull it together a bit more. I know I was saying earlier on we want breaks, but not too much. That's too much. There we go. Otherwise it'll sound too sort of separated. Nice. Okay, let's then look at what else we have going on here. I have some percussion here that I've just created from a few different libraries here. It's really simple stuff. I think this is going to add a lot though, just in terms of keeping things moving. Pull them out, bring them down. So with the bagpipes. Okay, nice. And we obviously don't want the rest of that, so. Cool. Let's add in some of our atonal percussion because that's quite important to this piece. So I've sort of mapped all this out already where I think I know it's going to go. Well, I say I think I know. I know it's going to go because John Powell put it there. I'm not going to go against his wishes. A little bit late, George, but it's fine. You know, this will stay up if you want to watch it later. And we've been going for a while now, but we're going to be going for at least another 10, 15 minutes, I think. So don't worry about it. It's all cool. How to control the brass so the same balance of the rest of the instruments without taking away their natural volume? That's a good question, and we shall have a look in a second and see maybe how we do that. So let's find my suspended cymbals here. I know they're here somewhere. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to want C4. Nice. Okay. So let's get some rolls in here. Just going to quickly write these rolls in. The suspended cymbal is pretty much doing the same thing all the way through. It's creating these little transition pieces. And then up here. Bring this up. Oh, sorry to hear it was a disastrous lesson. Hey, we've all been there. It's fine. We've all been there. So what I'm going to do is call this suspended cymbal. And I'm just going to do a little bit of mixing with this again, because again, we're talking about a bigger room where you'd hear more of the highs and lows and less of the mids. Something more like that. And I'm also just going to add a generous hit of Seventh Heaven to our percussion, put them in the back of the room. This is the kind of score that's all, well, it probably hasn't all literally been recorded in the same space at the same time, but it has that feel, right? It's not like a big modern hybrid score where you have all this kind of different stuff going on. This sounds pretty natural. So nice. Okay. Where is there we go. Yeah, I think that's going to work. See how it's just providing a little leading to each new sort of phrase. That's all it's doing. And at the end, it provides this nice big long held cymbal roll for the big chord. So it comes down like this, because this is what the player would do, bring it down, and then a big crescendo up at the end. Something like that. It'd be played better than that, of course, but hey, we don't need to worry about that right now. Okay, next thing I'm going to put in is my cymbals, which I think were going to be these ones. Let's take a look. So these are piatti crashes. So we have the suspended cymbal, which is like a cymbal you get in the drum kit where you can play it with beaters or however you want. And then we have a piatti, which is the crash cymbals, which we will put in now. And we will definitely have a look at that brass in a moment and see some of the techniques that we've used. So we'll go through that in a moment once I put some more of these percussion in. Okay, let's find where our piatti are. That cymbal, triangle. Nice, there we go. And I'll probably just copy over. Oh, I've already copied over the same. So now you can see we have the piatti for the downbeats and the suspended cymbal leading up to those downbeats. Nice. So you can hear how that's just adding. Really nice, simple percussion writing, but works really well. Next thing we're going to do is this, which is our grand cassa bass drum. It's a very important part of cinematic music. Let's take a look at that. There we go. Call this grand cassa. Just call it bass drum, but grand cassa is the right name technically. Take that out. I'm going to bring this in. Going to add it in like this, and then we're going to find it. It's down here low somewhere. There it is. So cool. And we're also going to want these rolls as well. So that's going to be on E3, which is all the way up here. And same thing here. Okay. And then we have that nice big roll at the end. Okay, let's make these. We don't want this same EQ curve on this because these are grand cassas. There we go. See how that's just adding with the piatti. Piatti's adding the high end and all that nice sizzle. The grand cassa's adding the big downbeat. Together, work really nice. We can even just increase. Yeah, that's quite nice. And then along with the suspended cymbal, we have a nice big grand cassa roll. Just a nice big way of holding that chord again, creating interest in that chord so it doesn't just become static. Now, let's see what else we've got. We've got a couple of other bits to do. We do have this, which I can probably put in something like Cerberus. There's a beat going on through the thing. Let's try it in Cerberus. It's probably more of a frame drum kind of thing, but that's okay. We can sort of mock it up in Cerberus. See where we get to. So let's just make some of these. Maybe these as well. So let's see. Okay. Bit of random velocity. Apology for people's ears. Bring that down and then just see if we can mix this in. Start by listening to it with. And then with our percussion above, the whole thing is a bit like this. So, with everything else, yeah, it sounds pretty good. I'm gonna just do a really simple technique of just filtering this. Not too much, but lose some of that tss at the very top. Because what that's going to do, in combination with a little bit of Seventh Heaven again, is just push this back. In the mix, we use the near hole, or medium near. Nice, and then we're just going to do, I'll do a bit of EQ post reverb. Not how I'd usually work, but it's fine. Hey, Bannerman. Maybe. Let's try and combine them. There we go. And I'm just going to add a little bit of randomness to this. I had a Mission Impossible placement not so long ago, which was very cool. Yeah, that was really good. It was me and another composer called Devesh. It wasn't just me, but yeah, we were very lucky to get that one. That will do. That was the one. Yeah, with Vedant, which is very cool. Brian and Jan and the gang steered us through. Got us over the line, which was cool. And that was great fun. Yeah, that was really cool. Thank you very much, Brandon. Yeah, we were very, very fortunate with that one. Well, I was. I mean, everyone else is killing it. But I've done some trailer stuff over the years, but it's not where I've done most of my work. So it was all a bit new, overwhelming for me. Well, not overwhelmed, but, you know, it was definitely all a bit new and deer in the headlights. But yeah, it was great fun. And luckily managed to get it through. Nice. We're going to do one more thing very quickly here, and then we're sort of nearly done, really. At least for what we can get done today. We could definitely make it sound better, and then we'll have a little look at that brass as well, because I haven't forgotten what you guys said. I'm going to use a nice cinematic sub bass here. Here we go. So let's just see something like that. Okay, get rid of those top lines. Yep. A lot of cinematic music these days has sub bass in it. I'm not sure whether this does, but it certainly sounds at time like it has some of that stuff. Just adds a lot of really nice low end. And in terms of brass, going back to the brass, sometimes low, either trailer brass as they call it, or a sub bass, a kind of Reese sub bass, can really help to gel the brass together. So that would probably be an octave higher. Something like that. See how that's adding this kind of low end weight? So that's a good technique. I'll very quickly show you how I've made this. There you go. It's my little preset in a free thing called Vital. It's basically just one sine wave, two saw waves, a little bit of filter. I've upped the number of voices and created some detune, which gives it this nice sort of greasy flavor. It really helps to make the track sound fuller. Nice. I'm just going to do a little bit of work on this brass. I really like this plugin. Let's see if it works here. Adds a lot of natural kind of saturated warmth. See how it sounds thin, quite thin there. And I'm just going to do a tiny little bit of mix on that brass. Sometimes things can get a little bit clipped at around 2-3K range. Nice. Yeah, we won't completely finish this today, but we'll just sort of get it roughly where it needs to be. Restyle basses, yeah, I love them. Work really well for a lot of different things, and they work quite well. I know Hans Zimmer does this a lot, only because he's written about it in places like VI Control. It's all over Hans Zimmer stuff. I think it's all over a lot of modern soundtracks. Even if you don't know it's there in the background. Sometimes it might be more sonic enhancement of the low frequencies with things like saturation and distortion. But very often it could just be a little bass like this. So let's just try and finish this up. We're nearly there with it, really. In terms of getting it to like a decent first stage, definitely want to mix it if we were going to do it properly. In our viola legato, this may trigger our weird contact thing again. It's fine. Yeah, Surge is really cool. I don't have Surge. Vital's really good though. If you need a free synth, you know, you're starting out or you don't have a lot of cash, Vital's great. There's a lot of other ones out there, but Vital's really good. So that's Dolce. Where is Allegato? Yes, please replace that. Wait for this to load a second. Bannerman saying sometimes to make my own synthetic low brassage. Yeah, really good idea. I think there's a lot of synth stuff in modern scores. Very, very subtle, but it really does help just to... In fact, going back to what we were talking about bringing all the brass together, sometimes layering a synth patch underneath the brass or with the brass, literally just doubling the brass, but really low down, just fills all the frequencies out and gives it like a stable bass. And then all the organic brass can kind of poke out a little bit, but, you know, it has this solid bass underneath. It's a really good way of working sometimes, and I think I do that again with trailer music. That's a really common thing to do, to get everything sounding larger than life. But even with modern cinematic, can't speak then, even with modern cinematic music, I think it's a really good technique, particularly with mock-ups. You know, if you've got a 30-piece brass section, you might not need to do that, like a real brass section, but obviously most of us are working with mock-ups, so we're always looking for subtle ways to make things sound, if not more realistic, just feel more like we want it to feel. Okay, so let's do this. Mixing is definitely not my forte either, George. So yeah, don't worry about that. That's something that I struggle with a lot. But yeah, it's sounding pretty good. But again, I can't really take credit because this has been well orchestrated and arranged by the great John Powell. So I'm kind of just piggybacking on his stuff. Again, another really beautiful little moment here where you have this ascending stuff happening in the second violins and the violas, and you can just hear the violas stop and then the second violins continue. Really nice full sound. Okay, let's just see what we have going on here. Nice. Okay. At the end, we have the bagpipes back. Really nice. We also have this little dulcimer, which is in... Oh, where did my dulcimer go? Where did it go? What happened? I must have put it in my violins somewhere. There it is. We'll just leave it there for now. Really beautiful little dulcimer. Just adds so much to that ending. Really great. And then I'm just going to finesse that Grand Casa. So it's going to be more like that. Nice. And then what I'm going to do is just add, I've got this free plugin that I use sometimes called Low End or Love End, depending on how you want to pronounce it, that I might just try and add here. So it's adding a lot of really nice, like low subby. A little goes a long way with this, so you don't want to use it too much. And then we'll just put in our woodwind shorts because the woodwinds continue here. We won't worry too much about the precise orchestration. We'll just put it in our ensemble patch. Again, woodwinds are not really doing much more than coloring what's going on here. And the way that John Powell uses them is in these octaves. Really nice kind of way of doing it. So. Let's nice. And then we just want oh, of course, we're missing these brass chords. You know what? I knew that we were missing something. We were going to duplicate, get rid of everything else, just have those brass chords, so we can get rid of all of that stuff. Octave higher. Nice. Something like that. And that's going to be a nice Okay, I think we're kind of there. We definitely do more work, but we sort of have most of the elements in place. Yeah, let's just do a couple more minutes and then we'll call it a day. I'm going to excite this Jaeger French horn. Let's just get these horns right. Cool. And then get these trumpets. So let's just make sure we got them doing what we want them to do. Oh, might have somehow got rid of half of our... Oh, I know why. That's because that's what we wanted to do. Just take a little bit of mids out of this. Oh, that's if I can get it to look right. There we go. So yeah, in terms of the managing the brass, let's go through the brass a little bit with this one. And I mean, I can only say what I've done today, and it's probably by no means close to, you know, I probably definitely finesse it more, but I can show you what I've done today. The first thing that we've done with the brass today is we've layered this brass. I think layering brass really helps a lot of the time because you get good bits. Each library sort of has its own character, and brass is such a lively sound that very often no one library can absolutely capture the sound that you're looking for. So here, the Jaeger stuff is all the fizz and the bright end of the brass and that really nice power. So that's like that cinematic level playing, really nice top dynamics. Then Poseidon, we have something that's a little bit more, not bassy, but kind of mid-range focus, roomy, has more of that nice cinematic tone. Doesn't sound great by itself. But together, you just get the best of both worlds. I'll probably even take that brass from Jaeger down just a tiny bit more in the mix to blend them together. So that's how we're creating the sort of full sound here. We've done the same thing with the horns. We've layered Jaeger and Talos. They just both bring in something slightly different to the mix. I'd probably mix them a bit better if I had time, but that's fine for today. Same thing here with the low brass. We're using Talos, Jaeger, and Poseidon, and the same reason. The power of these Jaeger trombones mixed with the kind of really nice cinematic weight of Poseidon, but it's a bit less powered by design. You know, in fact, we could probably bring that up a tiny bit on the dynamics maybe. But together, you get the best of both worlds. You kind of get Poseidon bedding in Jaeger. So you get all the power from Jaeger, but you get the nice room tone from Poseidon. And then we've got the same thing kind of going on here. We've got nucleus tubas, Talos low brass, and then the bass trombone from Poseidon. And it's the same thing. You're sort of getting the nice organic nature of the bass trombone inside of Poseidon, but by itself, that's probably not quite going to do for the low end. Talos adds all that nice low end goodness, but probably a bit too almost kind of not hybrid, but just a bit too much, if you like, to be supported by itself. And then to glue it all together, you've got the nice sort of low mids of the tubas from nucleus. And then as a final layer, just to really get that kind of sub 100 stuff. You kind of really want that just balanced. But listen, without, with, it's almost like it makes you feel the brass, if that makes sense. You know, it's that's sort of the impression. It's like you're feeling, if you're in a room with brass, you kind of feel it in your chest. In samples, sometimes you don't get that feeling. When you add a sub bass, you feel like you're feeling it, you know? It's got to be subtle. You don't want to sort of push it. And then with everything together, it should hopefully get a nice balance of the weight of that sub bass, the weight of the sort of nice Poseidon stuff where you get the beautiful room and all that kind of nice cinematic goodness. But then you get some of the energy of Jaeger and Talos just kind of going in there as well. And I would probably actually just take out a little bit of 2-3K again from this. And as a final thing, you can add some saturation to brass, which is what I've done here. Saturation distorts, but in a very musical way, the brass. There's nothing better than brass recorded on tape. If you listen back to the old Star Wars stuff, a big part of the sound of Star Wars is brass on tape. It naturally compresses. It adds all these beautiful distorted frequencies, but very musical distortion. Brass on tape just sounds so huge, so compressed, but in a very musical way. We can't quite capture that here, but we're sort of trying to do that, you know. So I've added this tape thing here. You can use almost anything if you've got Decapitator or some kind of tape emulation, as long as you use it subtly, but it just adds a lot of really nice kind of harmonics and stuff. So see how you feel like you kind of, again, you're getting that room tone, if you like, that feeling of being in the room. With the brass, we can actually probably take some of the high end down. Sometimes brass can get a bit too high endy. If you listen to brass on really good recordings, you get all the clarity of the high end, but none of the kind of fizz and aggressiveness. It sounds really beautifully situated in the room. I do a bit more mixing on this to try and capture that sound if I could, but we're sort of, you know, we're not too far away. So yeah, we'll just go through one more time. Like I said, you know, I think it's pretty good for a couple of hours work. You know, I was obviously given a head start by the fact all the good stuff was done by John Powell. But yeah, for a couple of hours work, we've done not too bad. So let's have a final listen to the result. yeah, that came together quite nicely, I think. So I hope that's been useful. I hope we've learned something along the way in terms of how John Powell's put this great piece together. As I said, I think the key to this piece compositionally is that it's almost like a pop song or almost like a punk rock song. I know it sounds a bit weird, but if you really listen to it and break it down, the melody and the chords, this is something that you could hear as a kind of ballad or as a pop punk thing. He's really got that great melodic modern sensibility, but obviously he's done all the traditional orchestral stuff to get it there in terms of the violin rhythms, in terms of the change between melodies, from horns to trumpets to woodwinds and things like that. Obviously you've got these great textures supporting the main elements. You've got this huge brass, and then you've got some really nice kind of percussion to drive it forward. So yeah, quite traditionally orchestrated, but in terms of composition, kind of a nice blend of modern sensibilities, certainly melodically and harmonically, but with traditional orchestral techniques. And it's just a great score. If you haven't heard the score before, listen to the whole thing. And as I say, you can buy the sheet music. Really, really worth analyzing if you're into that kind of thing, because there's a lot of great techniques there. And hopefully we cover something today. So we'll head back to just chatting, and we will wrap up over the next couple of minutes. And yeah, we'll call it a day. Cool. So that was our How to Train Your Dragon. As I said, hopefully this has been really useful for you guys. It's been great to speak to you. Sorry if I've been a little bit out of the mix here and there, but I saw you guys having good conversations. I'm going to go back and check them out. And hopefully, yeah, this has given you some ideas of how you might mock some of this stuff up, and also how great composers like John Powell use orchestral forces to create nice, big, full, rich sounds. And as I say, we didn't do too much mixing today. We didn't do too much mock-up work. I'd usually spend a bit more time trying to get things sounding more realistic, but it's just so well written that you don't have to do huge amounts to kind of get it somewhere in the ballpark of where you want it to go. That's when something's well written. You pretty much just copy it from the page to the door, and it kind of sounds pretty good straight out of the bat, because that's how well written it is. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Bannerman. Thank you, everyone that's been with us. This has been really good fun for me today, and it's always great to do this with you guys. Other composers who, well, we know what it's like. We all have great fun composing. We sometimes have all those same problems composing too, when we're trying to figure out how to do things and trying to learn how other people do things. So as I say, hopefully this has been somewhat useful today, giving you guys some techniques that might be useful for your compositions. I'm not sure what we're doing next week, but we will be back next week. It's going to be fun, whatever we do. And if you have any suggestions, put them in the chat, put them in our Discord, put them in the comments. Thank you, Brandon. No, my pleasure. And Nucleus Light was my first intro to real orchestral production, and I fell in love with the AI sound. Thank you very much. Same here. I got Nucleus first, but Nucleus was my first introduction, I think, to Audio Imperia. And the same thing. I just think some incredible sounds in that library and the other libraries. And I'm obviously biased now because I'm working with Audio Imperia, but before that I was a fan, and I still remain a fan. And I think for certain soundtracks, especially these big brassy cinematic things, it's some of the best stuff to be using, just to capture that excitement and that kind of feeling of brass players playing in that range. The same with the strings and everything. Some great stuff there to kind of render these things to life. So yes, thank you, Brandon. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing. No problem at all. I really enjoy it, and I'm just glad that I can help you guys however I can. And like I said, I'm learning as much from you as you are from me, because that's how it is, right? No matter how much you know, there's always something that you don't know, or some other way that you can do things that's really interesting. So it's all about sharing, and I appreciate your comments and ideas and thoughts as much as hopefully sometimes I can lend that stuff to you. Sam says, thank you so much for doing this and teaching us great tips and tricks. I'm pretty new to production and Cubase, so this is amazing. No problem at all, Sam. Yeah, if you're not on our Discord, join our Discord, because we do talk music on there. We share stuff, we give feedback. I'm hoping to be more active on there as things go forward. So as I said, I'll be sharing some MIDI stuff when I can as well. So some of the things that we do on here, I'm not sure about this one, but certainly some of the things that we do in the future and the past, I'll put on our Discord, and then you guys can download the MIDI files or project files and dig in and, play around and sort of do what you like with those things to figure out, in real time, kind of how those things were put together and make any changes and, experimentations that you want to do with those. So yeah, if you're not on our Discord, there should be a link in the description, and there'll be some goodies on there in the not too distant future as well. But yes, thank you so much, guys, for all your lovely comments. And as I say, it's always a pleasure for me as well to spend time with you guys. And it's great that we've got this nice community. It's growing every week. And yeah, it's great to see new people and some of the regulars as well, and hang out for a couple of hours and write music. What more could you want in life, right? This is what we do it for. So yes, I think we will wrap up for today. Thank you so much for everyone that's joined me, so much for your comments, so much for all the you know, sort of support and just hanging out. It's always great to hang out with the musicians. As I say, back next Tuesday. I'm not sure what we'll be doing, but it will be up in the not too distant future. Until then, happy composing. If you want to share anything with us in the Discord, please do. We always love to hear what you guys are writing.